All right, the first story at the top of antiwar.com today. Trump suggests that strikes on land in Venezuela could start soon. So President Trump on Wednesday suggested that U.S. strikes on alleged drug shipments on land could be coming soon amid the U.S. bombing campaign targeting boats in Latin America. Trump has made similar comments before, and according to multiple media reports, the U.S. is preparing to bomb Venezuela with the ultimate goal of ousting Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. The president claimed to reporters at the White House that he had legal authority to launch the strikes, but Congress has not authorized the bombing campaign, which the Constitution requires for launching a war. Trump said that he may notify Congress of the plans to launch strikes on land targets, but he did not say that he would seek authorization. He said, quote, "We will hit them very hard when they come in by land, and they haven't experienced that yet. But now we're totally prepared to do that. We'll probably go back to Congress and explain exactly what we're doing when they come to the land," end quote. So, based on his language, it sounds like he could be talking about drug shipments in Mexico or something like that, where drug shipments actually come to the U.S. by land. But all the reporting, all the indications are that this is gonna mean airstrikes in Venezuela. And I mean, as I understand Venezuela, it's not a major production hub for cocaine. There is production on the border with Colombia, but for the most part, it's a transit country. So I don't think drugs are being transited through Venezuela that end up going to the U.S. by land. But it's still, again, all signs are pointing to they're going to start with airstrikes in Venezuela. So the president previously told Congress that he believes the U.S. is now in an armed conflict with drug cartels. And the way that they frame this bombing campaign is they say it's self-defense because of the large number of drug overdoses in the U.S., but that's primarily caused by fentanyl and synthetic opioids, other synthetic opioids. And that just doesn't come from Venezuela. And this is something that Senator Rand Paul pointed out in a recent interview. He's been very outspoken in his opposition to this bombing campaign and the push toward a regime change war with Venezuela. He was on with Piers Morgan this week, and he said, quote, "There is no fentanyl made in Venezuela, not just a little bit, there's none being made. These are outboard boats that, in order for them to get to Miami, would have to stop and refuel 20 times," end quote. He continued, quote, "It's all likely going to Trinidad and Tobago. There are a lot of reasons to be worried about this. Number one is the broader principle of when can you kill people indiscriminately when there's war. That's why when we declare war, it's supposed to be done by Congress. It's not supposed to be done willy-nilly. When there's war, you just kill people in the war zone. There are rules of engagement." End quote. So since September 2nd, the U.S. has bombed at least 7 boats in the Caribbean and 1 now in the Eastern Pacific, and we'll get into that in the next story. And according to the numbers released by the U.S., they have killed, extrajudicially executed at least 34 people at sea without providing any evidence to back up the claims about what the boats were carrying or about who they're bombing. Sources told the Washington Post on Wednesday that any U.S. airstrikes in Venezuela would likely first target alleged trafficker encampments or clandestine airstrips, but regime change remains the ultimate goal. So one person familiar with the administration's deliberations told the Washington Post, quote, "There really is no turning back unless Maduro is essentially not in power," end quote. So the U.S. has built up a significant force in the Caribbean, as we've been covering. We've seen heavy bombers and special operations helicopters flying near Venezuela. And officials say this is part of a psychological campaign against Maduro, as well as, same thing with the leaks, this report about the CIA covert activity. The idea is that they're hoping someone in Maduro's inner circle turns on him or that he voluntarily steps down. Apparently, Trump is upset that he hasn't done that already. But realistically, that is very unlikely to happen. And so, I do believe we are headed toward an attempt at regime change, or they might just start with some limited airstrikes, but that means war. I mean, if any other country started bombing us against our will, no matter what the circumstance was, that would mean war. So this is the direction that we're headed in with Venezuela. And then the next one here, the U.S. bombs a boat that it claims was carrying drugs in the Pacific Ocean. So the U.S. military has carried out its 8th known strike on a boat that it claimed, without providing evidence, was carrying drugs. But this time, the vessel was bombed in the eastern Pacific Ocean, according to U.S. War Secretary Pete Hegseth. The previous 7 boats were targeted in the Caribbean. According to the U.S., that's the official story. And striking one in the Pacific marks an expansion of the U.S. military campaign. Hegseth said that the strike, he claimed that they killed 2 narco-terrorists, a term that the administration uses to justify the extrajudicial executions at sea for an alleged crime that does not receive the death penalty in the U.S. That, this is what they are doing now, and they're really increasing the rate at which they're bombing these boats. So, of course, Hegseth, in his statement, he put out a video of the strike. He claimed that our intelligence knew it was involved in illicit narcotics smuggling, and again claimed that they killed 2 narco-terrorists just without providing any evidence. And it's not that they're not just giving the public evidence about their intelligence. They're also not giving it to Congress. And there is relatively little opposition to this whole policy within Congress. I mean, you see some Democrats speaking out. We have that bill now introduced by Tim Kaine and Rand Paul to block war with Venezuela. There was the vote in the Senate to block these strikes, and that failed in a vote of 48 to 51, unfortunately. But just for the most part, we just don't really see much pushing against this. They're really bringing the war on terror to this hemisphere closer to home, using the same language. Even in Hegseth's statements, he says, like we targeted Al Qaeda in the Middle East, we're going after narco terrorists in our hemisphere. So they're combining the war on drugs with the war on terror. And Hegseth did not say exactly where this boat was targeted, but a U.S. official told the New York Times that it was off the coast of Colombia. So again, on the Pacific side, in the eastern Pacific Ocean. So they're really ramping these things up. And when it comes to these strikes on boats, if they start hitting what are they going to strike on land? Are they going to start? There's a lot of planes that run this stuff. Are they going to start shooting planes out of the air? There's a lot of ways that this could go.